Hello and welcome to the Charles Cook Podcast. The focus of this podcast is on state and local issues here in the state of Tennessee. You can follow my podcast on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, TuneIn, and Alexa. Just search for the Charles Cook Podcast and you should be able to find me on any of those. Also, follow or subscribe on those platforms and you'll be notified when I upload new content. And the best place to find those links for the podcast is on my webpage at charlescookpodcast.buzzsprout.com. And you can email me at charlescookpodcast@gmail.com. Okay, today, I know that I say I focus, the focus of this podcast is on local and state issues, but today I want to tie it into a little bit of the national politics and things that goes on. Many of the things that we're seeing today is just the growth that we have seen over the last 80 something years, 70 to 80, 90 years of progressivism. And whether we want to admit it or not, the progressives have had their way in growing the size of government. And all you have to do is look at it. And anytime that somebody feels like something needs to happen, they choose to create a government program or whatever and to address it through a government program. And that could be on the national level, or on the state level, or even on the local level. You know, we want to talk about health care or whatever. We got Obamacare on the national level. You know, we do silly things just like here in the state of Tennessee, providing diapers in the governor's budget for the next 2 years for people for the first 2 years. And this, you know, is that the role of government, even to the point of on the local level of things that we do? Oh, great. It would be a great thing if we had a community center. Well, instead of letting the free market take care of that, oh, nobody sees a profit in it. So let's get the government to do it. That's what we do. So how did we get to this point? And, you know, a lot of people don't understand where the biggest seed was for this was planted. And FDR basically come out with what he deemed, or what as others had deemed, as the Second Bill of Rights. Some of them have called the Economic Bill of Rights. But so I want to kind of read you a little bit of this and kind of explain, we'll talk about it and everything. We'll you know, kind of explain it as we go through, just another way of looking at it. So, as I said, progressives, liberals, they love the Bill of Rights. It's just not the Bill of Rights that you think of, you know, where most of our God-given rights. And you will see that here, how he describes the Bill of Rights. So let me get into this a little bit here, and I think you'll find it a little interesting. And, you know, most people have never even heard of the Second Bill of Rights or the Economic Bill of Rights. I spoke at several years, I guess it's been about 10 years ago, at a Republican meeting in another county. And when I brought up the Second Bill of Rights, people were like, what's he talking about? And I could see them pulling out their phones and Googling it. And they were like, hey, here it is. You know, he's right. And yeah, I was right. And so most people, for this being the first time, maybe the first time of hearing of this, but as you see over the last 70 to 90 years, wherever you think it, but want to start looking at it, you'll see where this has grown from into where we are at today in the mindset of the progressives and liberals in this country. Now, I'm not saying Democrats and Republicans, because folks, we got plenty of Republicans that are progressive and liberal, whether you want to admit it or not. I know they're on your team red, and you don't want to view it that way, but the facts are they are progressive and liberal. Don't listen to what they talk about. Watch how they vote and see what they do, and you'll know who they are. All right. So this was from FDR's, Franklin Delano Roosevelt's message to Congress on January the 11th, 1944. So from Franklin Delano Roosevelt's message to Congress on the State of the Union, this was proposed not to amend the Constitution, but rather as a political challenge, encouraging Congress to draft legislation to achieve these aspirations. It is sometimes referred to as the Second Bill of Rights. Okay, so here's part of the speech. It is our duty now to begin to lay the plans and determine the strategies for winning of the lasting peace and establishing of the American standard of living higher than ever before known. We cannot be content, no matter how high that the general standard of living may be, if some factions or some fraction of our people, whether it be 1/3, 1/5, 1/10, is ill-fed, ill-clothed, ill-home, and insecure, this republic has had its beginning and grew to its present strength under the protection of these certain unalienable political rights. Keep that in mind, not our unalienable God-given rights, but he calls them political rights. Among these is the right to free speech, free press, free worship, trial by jury, freedom of unreasonable search and seizures. They are rights of life and liberty. They were our rights to life and liberty, okay? As our nation has grown in size and stature, however, as our industrial economy expanded, these political rights, there we go again, political rights, proved inadequate to assure the equality in the pursuit of happiness. We have come to a clear realization of the facts that true individual freedom cannot exist without economic security and independence. Necessitous men are not free men. So if you have a need for something, you're not a free man. People who are hungry and out of a job are stuffs in which dictators are made. In our day, these economic truths have become accepted as self-evident. We have accepted, so to speak, a second Bill of Rights, which is the basis of security, prosperity, can be established for all, regardless of station, race, or creed. So basically, we're establishing a second Bill of Rights, and they don't have to be ratified as our other Bill of Rights in the Constitution, but we're just going to accept these. So here is a list of these rights. The right to a useful and remunerative job in the industries or shops or farms or mines of this nation. You have a right to those. The right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation. The right of every farmer to raise or sell his product at a return which will give him and his family a decent living. The right of every businessman, large or small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom and unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad. The right of every family to a decent home. The right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health. The right to adequate protection from economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment. The right to a good education. All these rights spell security. And after this war is won, we must be prepared to move forward in the implementation of these rights. A new goal to new goals of human happiness and well-being. America's own rightful place in the world depends, in large part, upon how fully these and similar rights can be have been carried into the practice for our citizens. So that was from FDR's State of the Union, January the 11th, 1944. So let's go back to this. So a couple of things I want to hit on. So everybody in the United States is not supposed to have any problems. If you're insecure, we're never going to be satisfied. Your rights are political rights instead of God-given rights. You see where these progressives and liberals and even some of these so-called Republicans who want to do red flag laws and stuff, they're political. They're granted to you by government. They're not, your rights are not given to you by your creator, as it says in the Declaration of Independence. That if you have a need for something, you're not a free man. Imagine that. That's what it says here. Necessitous men are not free men. Okay. So, and as it says again, these are political rights. So if they're given to you by government, government can take them away. Government can grant them and take them away from you. So this is all these people who uphold FDR. This is, and even those who do not, but still talk about these things, are basically part of socialism. And that's where, you know, a lot of this comes from is Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, FDR. But so let's look at these rights that he's listed out again and talk about that a little bit. The right to a useful and remunerative job in the industries or shops or farms or the mines of this nation. So if you've got a right to a job, okay, not to go to work and work hard and, you know, you can call in sick and show up 2 days a week and everything else, and you still got a job. Is that how unions are used? They get your money and then they try to help you with things like that. Well, he's missed a half a year, nothing going on. He deserves that job. He's got a right to it. You know, you can be lazy and don't work, don't want to work as hard as the other people around you, and you think you got a right to that job and the same amount of pay. All right. The right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation. Well, if you work as hard as somebody, you should earn as much as them. But if you choose not to, that's on you. And if you don't like it, if you're working in a job and you're working as hard as somebody else and you're not making as much pay with them, guess what? The job market, that's what it's for. Go out and get you another job, especially right now. You can go out and get another job. Maybe people don't get paid as much as cause the company is falling on harder times and they can't pay it. That happens. But if you want more money, you have an opportunity to change jobs and make more money. But you don't have that right. The right to every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return of which will give him and his family a decent living. If you're going out here and you're raising a good crop, your crop is just as good as anybody else's, you have a right to go out here. You should be able to sell it and ask for a fair price for it. Do you have a right to it? Farmer doesn't take care of his crops, lets the weeds take over his field. He has an acre of corn, doesn't yield that much corn, but the other guy has an acre of corn and he works it, tends it, and has a good yield. The guy that didn't take care of his crop shouldn't make as much money on his corn as the other guy did. But it all sounds real good when you're saying, oh, you have a right to it because you're sticking up for the little guy. Well, the little guy may just be a lazy guy who didn't take care of his crops. The right to every businessman, large or small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom from unfair competition and domination and monopolies at home and abroad. Well, we see what happens when government gets involved in free markets, don't we? It doesn't work, history has shown us that. And most of the time, it's the corporate businesses that get involved with government that pushes the small guy down. Let's say like a big burger chain, I won't mention any, that lobbies governments to create regulations that the small people have to abide by, that really makes it hard on them and puts them out of business and sends more business to the large corporation burger providers. That's how it works. Big time. Because they're the ones that's got the money and can lobby and get things done in government. The right of every family to have a decent home. What's a decent home? And, if I choose to lay around on my tail and don't want to get up and go to work, I want to go out and drink up my money, smoke up my money, gamble my money away. I'm not a responsible person. Take care of my family. Do I have a right to a decent home? Because I'm wasting my money. I'm not taking care of my family. Do I have a right to a decent home? You know, you wanted a right to a decent job, everything else. Now you're irresponsible with your finances, but somebody else does. Now let's look at what's happening right here in the last month or so. The people who pay their bills on time and have a good credit score, most of the time get a lower interest rate on a loan. But the Biden administration wants to increase the interest rates on people who work hard and pay their bills on time and are not late, so that the deadbeats who don't pay their bills on time get a lower interest rate. You see where this is falling in now? Under the second Bill of Rights. And I hope you can see how it all ties in. The right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health. Well, you know, we see Medicaid, Medicare, and we've seen the effects of Obamacare. And now you know where all this has been driven from. It's the dream of the progressives and liberals that have pushed this. And is it adequate medical care? You know, in the real world, back 20, 30 years ago, you could go out, you turned 18, you went to college, you went to work, you got a job, you looked for a job that had good health care, and that's what you tried to do. So you could have health care coverage for your family and everything. And they say, well, not every job's got that. Well, you know, the way you get those jobs to provide that is you move from that job to one that does. That's what you do. That's called the job market. You know, it helps when people say, well, I've got to provide something to get people to stay. I've got to provide better health care. They're leaving. My pay is good, but my health care is subpar or below standard, and people don't want to stay here. So I have to provide more if I want to keep a good workforce. That's the way it works. But no, we get government involved and everybody gets crappy health care because of government getting involved. And do we have the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health? You know, the right to adequate protection from economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment. Well, fears of old age, Social Security. Let's look at Social Security. Is it going to be there when you and I retire? You know, if you have a parent or parents that have retired, is that Social Security relieving their economic fears, especially when government is spending like crazy and printing money and making the value of every dollar of that Social Security worth less? They're raking and scraping, trying to get by. And if they live to their mid 80s, 90s, and they don't have a pension, their 401ks are running out of money. What kind of protection from economic fears has that provided? Because it's a Ponzi scheme. And then the government turns around and taxes them on money they've already paid taxes on. Another great example of what happens when you get government involved in this. the right to a good education. Well, look what happened here. We created the Federal Department of Education. And ever since then, quality of education in the United States has went downhill. We are worse now than we were 40 years ago, 43 years ago, 45 years ago. And it's not getting any better. We look at the scores that come out of the state of Tennessee for third grade reading level. Everybody's all up in arms about it. And the more money we throw at it, the worse it gets. Because we have the federal government involved in our education. It's not controlled at the state and local levels like it should be. And then we look at what is a good education? We do the Tennessee Promise here, Tennessee Reconnect, 2 years of free college tuition to people graduating high school or people who have been in the workforce that wants to go back and go to community college, get a 2-year degree, or go to TCAT. But what has it done? It has driven up the cost of college tuition in the state. When now these colleges and universities, tech schools realize that they get more money because the government's providing it, so they increase the cost. So if you're a single mom, you know, with the Tennessee Promise or the Tennessee Reconnect, if you're a single mom and you're trying to go to school, work, raise a family, you're doing the best that you can do, and you fall kind of below the standard on the scores, you lose that funding. You know, what's more important? Test scores or taking care of a sick child, taking care of your family. So, you know, every time the government gets involved with these things, we take a hit. It gets worse. And, you know, but remember, here in the state of Tennessee, it wasn't Democrats that got that done. The free 2 years of community college or 2 years of associate degree or TCAT. This was done under Republicans. But you see where the ideals come from. Progressives. So did we have conservative governors? Do we have conservative legislators who voted for this stuff? Is it the role of government to support this stuff? I say no, it's not. We have let our universities and colleges do whatever they want to do. You know, you have to go in and instead of studying for what your degree background is, they throw all these other foreign languages and everything else on you and make you take that, and you have to spend money on that instead of working towards your degree. They throw us other stuff in on that you have to take to graduate with your diploma. It's crazy. So college wasn't for me. But, and now you see, if you send a kid to college, Lord knows what you're going to get back. bunch of little liberals is what you're probably going to get back when you send them off to college now, especially the universities. So anyway, the Bill of Rights. When we talk about the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, freedom of speech, all this and that, right to keep and bear arms, they don't support that stuff, but they support the Bill of Rights, just not the ones you think about. So look it up, do some homework on it. You'll find some great videos of these progressives and liberals pushing this stuff on YouTube. Even Bernie Sanders out there talking about it. AOC's talking about it. And educate yourself and understand where this stuff comes from and how they just keep pushing it. You know, had FDR, LBJ's Great Society, the Clintons, the Bushes. And when I say the Bushes, remember, Medicaid Part D. It was the largest expansion of government until Obamacare come along. You see. So the Republicans and Democrats are at it together, or should I say the liberals and progressives. So with that, I say, have a good day. Look into this, check it out. And I hope you've learned a little bit from this podcast. So when you see these things coming about, you know the signs. Are they conservatives? Do they love freedom? Do they love small government? Or are they progressives and liberals who are there to keep growing government? There's a difference. If we're voting and pushing this stuff, if we're voting for government increases, they're not conservatives. They should be reducing the size of government. And look at what's going on in the nation's capital as I speak. Anyway, have a good day. God bless you. We'll see you on the next podcast.